Right. Now this is an interesting one. I should have flicked back to the... I'll let you read this and we'll go back to that main slide with all the themes on it. I'll show you where control sits. Now, I'll just very quickly go back to here. And here's control up here at number 4. Control was a very powerful mediating theme in the analysis. And there were an array, and you'll see that it's linked with alcohol and also with other drugs. And this comes back to that conversation that we were having about the failure to differentiate between different drugs and the effects of different drugs, and the meaningfulness of using those different drugs. And the people in this study saw a big issue around alcohol. A lot of them saw alcohol as very problematic. They felt they had a lack of control when they were using alcohol, or that the people they were socialising with who were using alcohol were out of control. And as a consequence of that, they made the choice to use cannabis, as in the case of this first person here, who was a teacher. She'd been with a partner for many years. That guy had been killed. There was some kind of gang scene thing happening there. And then she'd subsequently hooked up with another guy, and very much opposed, I think that person was also probably in the gang scene, but she was very much opposed to the use of drugs, as she called them, as opposed to alcohol. She had a situation where her partner had been drinking and had got abusive. I didn't inquire as to the extent of that. But he said to her, well, you know, if I'd been smoking pot, that wouldn't have happened. And she was so, that made her think, and she actually went out and bought some cannabis herself, having never used it before, bought it herself. They were going out to a do, gave it to him, and said, well, there you go, you have that. And she said, well, he had the smoke, and he sat on one beer all night, didn't drink any more alcohol. And so that then became the thing, that he in fact, because he'd given up cannabis for her, and was using alcohol instead. And so he went back to cannabis, and then she tried it. And she said she really enjoyed it. She found it very relaxing. And I asked her at one point whether she used other drugs. And she said, oh, no, I wouldn't ever use anything else. And I said, you know, and like LSD, she mentioned LSD, and she said the reason she wouldn't use any other drugs is because they're all about lack of control. And she said, I'm a very uptight person. I don't like to be out of control. And I use cannabis because I remain in control. And so there was a very strong discourse around this idea of control in association with cannabis use in comparison with alcohol, where the participants felt very strongly, almost in fact completely, that that alcohol promoted a lack of control and that they weren't comfortable with that at all. So this comes back to this notion of making a rational choice. This is what they would argue, is that they were making a rational choice around their use. So there's this notion of control that, as I say, is very strong there, and it's very much aligned with cannabis use.
I mean, I read that and I think, yeah, how much have they drunk? You know, to be actually out of control. I mean, if people are drinking safely, you know,
yeah,
they probably wouldn't have that experience to that level.
Well, I mean, you know, and that's a very good point, right? And there's a whole lot of issues around this. I mean, and this comes back again to thinking about the different substances. Now, the thing about cannabis is it affects you very quickly. It's a rapid onset. And so generally, you have an idea of how intoxicated you are. Whereas with alcohol, there's a lag. You know, there's about an hour, isn't there? You know. Yeah. And so you can actually get to a point, and you might drink to a point where you think, oh yeah, gee, I don't think I should have any more alcohol. But of course, there's still another hour's worth of alcohol in your system.
think the age.
You know, and so there's a. Sorry, John.
I think the age is a telling thing though. Female 18.
Yeah, yeah.
When we're 18, we always drink like.
Well, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tails off as you get
But
older.
I think it's interesting though that while she's having that experience, that negative experience with alcohol, she sort of feels that she's having a more positive experience with cannabis. You know, and I mean, you might say, well, hang on a minute, why is she going hard on the cannabis? This person here, she was the youngest person in the sample, and I did ask them about their school experiences, and she said that the first time she heard about drugs was in the DARE program. She hadn't heard about drugs before that. And in fact, the DARE program in New Zealand is very different from the American one. But the American one has been associated with increased drug use. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite convinced. It's all together.
Yeah.
Some people just,
I don't know. I think you'd have to think very carefully about when you were going to expose someone to drug education. I think you'd have to be, the idea that you should get in really young. I'm sort of thinking, you know, I mean, you can have conversations with people, but having a concerted, education campaign about that, I don't know. So this, I think, sort of encapsulates that idea that the choice in this case for this person to use cannabis was a choice that she felt she informed herself about as she was becoming involved in it, and so just reinforcing that notion of people making a rational choice about substance as opposed to.
It's quite a weird thing.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, it's interesting doing this kind of work because you might sort of say that, but then you hear it being said over and over and over again. By all these people saying the same sort of stuff.
Like, I mean, I've really researched all the substances and I, picked one out. I haven't actually ever did that in my career, I think.
Yeah.
We did today. Well, yeah, the young guy who said, you'd get given something and be told what it was, and you'd go home and look it up in the medicals and, check it out to see what it did. And if you didn't like the effects, you wouldn't take it.
I take your point. I think one of the things, just coming back to this particular group of people, and we have to remember what type of sample this was. They were skewed towards relatively heavy use, so they're people who clearly have quite an enthusiasm for substance use. And so, in that sense, they may not be typical of the average population, of the general population.
And my contact with people is usually because they're in trouble with the substance.
Yeah,
But my response is they know nothing about it.
Right.
And, they know nothing about the drug or what it is, what it actually does.
Yeah,
and they know nothing, they just knew that whatever it was, they liked it and hooked into it. Well, they didn't like it, but they liked the effect.
Right. Yeah, and of course, and I think the point also to pick up on there, Lorraine, is where you say, well, of course, you're meeting people who have a problem with the drug, and so you're also meeting a particular population. Yeah.
It's just simply like saying I rather like eating cake or something like that, isn't it? It's a preference for.
Well, it's about things like pleasure, isn't it?
It is really, which is
and pleasure. When you think about the discourse around drug use, illegal drug use, pleasure just hardly rates a mention. People do not talk about pleasure.
Or fun.
Not officially. You're not allowed to talk about it. Why do people use drugs? Well, I don't know. It's all so terribly bad. Why would anybody? I mean, the discourse that you hear, the public discourse is no. It's all about it's bad. It's that. So here we have some discussions around risk, and this is the risk of people knowing that these people use cannabis. And there's two quite different perspectives here.
I think the second one's a bit more striking.
So this is a person who, at the age of 46, was still very determined that her mother would never know about it.
Yeah, she almost sounds like, if I was to read that, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, she's obviously selling it.
Yeah, there's something else.
No, she definitely
It almost
wasn't.
seems like she
She's got the she'd rate on the paranoia scale.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Well, she rated on the dependent
You
scale.
can become non-trustworthy.
Yeah. But she wasn't. I discovered that she wasn't selling it. She was in fact, she never bought it. She exchanged it for. She had a brother who knew someone who got some sort of thing. On very rare occasions, she bought something. But she wasn't selling it. At least that's what I was told. Dave, of course, is very cynical about this.
Dodgy.
Yeah.